Hello, and welcome to Spilling the Milk, the podcast where we learn that every mom's breastfeeding journey is different and that we can still learn a lot from one another. My guest today is Cara Tyrell, and she founded Core 4 Parenting, where she has courses and coaching for parents around collaborative parenting and conscious parenting. She's really passionate about advocating for the COVID generation of kids who started their life essentially in isolation or had their life interrupted and their normal social growth and development stunted and sort of reversed. And so she's really advocating for how we can support those children, this very specific generation of children, now that they're entering preschool and kindergarten and being expected to perform at the same levels as their predecessors who did not have this life-altering experience of going through a pandemic as a little one. So very interested in all of her thoughts on that, as well as we really get into what it means to take a collaborative parenting approach as opposed to an I am the parent and I have all the authority, you listen to me, you do what I say kind of approach. It's sort of the opposite of that. It's something that I'm trying. It's a practice, right? It's something that I try and I fail and I try again with my 3 boys. And so it was very validating to talk to her, get her perspective. She gives us some practical tips on what that can sound like and how to repair when you mess up, which I really appreciate. We do, of course, touch on her own breastfeeding experience, which I will say is very, very emotional and something that really impacted me listening to what she's gone through. I think our takeaway is that it is very normal to have a different breastfeeding experience with each of your children because each of your children is a completely different person. And that will only become more and more obvious as they grow. And really, that dovetails into the rest of the conversation about how to really tune into your kids and parent them in a way that is going to feel good for both of you. It honestly starts on day one, and it can really start with how you feed your baby and how you take care of them in those early days. So it was an amazing conversation for me. I hope you enjoy it. There's so much more. Cara has so many resources for us, and I will link those in our show notes. Please follow her. Please seek out her help if you specifically are struggling with the toddler tantrums right now. If parenting your toddler is really a drain on you and you feel hopeless, you feel like what you've been trying is not working, you don't see a light at the end of the tunnel, and you really would love someone to offer hope and a different way of doing things, I highly recommend seeking out Cara's help, and I'm very happy to be bringing her to you today. Please enjoy. All right, so for today's conversation, we are a breastfeeding focused podcast. I think I could probably talk to you for like 5 hours about all of the parenting things. And I told my friends that I was interviewing you today, and my one friend and I literally just had the conversation, how do we get our little boys to stop from swearing, even though they hear it from us? And then I went to your podcast, and that was like 2 episodes ago. You exactly covered that. So I sent a screenshot to my friend. I was like, this is who I'm talking to. She's like, ask her all the questions, find out all the things. So, we'll all be listening to your podcast as well. But if you could just give us a little introduction, who you are, what you do, and then maybe take us back to the beginning of your own breastfeeding journey.
Yes. Okay. So I'm Cara Tyrell, founder of Core 4 Parenting and creator of the collaborative parenting methodology. So I'm an early childhood educator and a conscious parenting coach. And I just felt so disgruntled every year that I was teaching in the classroom, finding I loved my kids, but they were less and less ready to learn in every area of that classroom. So I said, the solution, and I know it starts between birth and 5, is to empower parents to understand the role that they play as their child's first teacher. That has nothing to do with ABCs, 1, 2, 3's colors or numbers, and everything to do with the connection that they make, the social emotional learning that's organically happening through those conversations, and the interpersonal skills that their kids are learning out in the world with their parents. So that's what I left the classroom and I started my company, and I create courses and curriculum and coaching and do all of this for parents so that they're raising really ready kids in every way to take on the role of being a human being and the role of being a learner when they go to school. I have girls who are 18 and 20, so I'm on the other side of the active parenting journey from those toddler years, and I can tell you with 100% certainty that collaborating with my girls to become a team and mutual problem solvers and engaging their cognition and their thinking patterns as we moved through the ages and stages of their development has made them totally ready to take on this world.
I love that. I love that because I'm very aware that many other people their age are not. I'm familiar with the book, like The Coddling of the American Mind, and just like the crisis of teenagers going to college and it just not going very well. Also, like the mental health crisis that's impacting teenagers right now. So, it's very near and dear to my heart. And then I guess so you would have to think back quite a ways to when you were pregnant, having the first baby, and then starting your breastfeeding journey there.
Yeah. Well, I do and I don't because the way that I tested my curriculum and methodology is I went back to being a full-time nanny. So I had infants and toddlers in my world while I had tween and then teen girls at the same time. And I'm famous for saying toddlers and teenagers are essentially the same person
Uh-huh.
because of that. So, yes, my breastfeeding journey started 23 years ago. And then I've had the amazing honor of supporting other moms as they were going through theirs
Mhm.
as their counterpart, as their trusted nanny. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just been a beautiful journey. So I will share, I'm very open and vulnerable about this because I want all moms to understand um, that I'm also a lost mom. So I have a daughter who would be 23. I
Mhm.
carried her to 40 weeks in one day, and
Mhm.
then she was stillborn, and we didn't get to bring her home from the hospital.
Mhm.
But my body continued to believe that it had a baby to feed, and so
Mhm.
that was actually the beginning of my breastfeeding journey, was managing my mother's milk without a baby to feed.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I didn't I did not know that was the beginning of your journey. I guess could you walk us through what that was like?
Yes. Well, in the stages of acute grief, right, managing just to get through every day, I didn't understand the way that milk showed up.
Mhm.
And I wasn't present of mind enough to be really thinking it through.
Mm-mm.
And so my milk fully came in on the day of her funeral. And I
Mhm.
didn't know what to do.
Mhm.
Emily, I was just so stuck. And I think it was my husband who said to me, "You should probably pump.
Mm. That's
You
so
should
that's like the
probably
most
just"
loving thing he could have said.
Yeah, right? "You
Yeah.
should probably pump so that we can get through this." And I did know, right, from all the classes that we took that when
Mhm.
you pump, you make more milk, and it was a really hard decision. I did do it, and then I was able to attend to my own emotional needs more during the cabbage leaves and the process
Mm.
moving moving through that, right? It's a
Mhm.
very intense period of time, but a very short, intense period of time, kind of like labor and delivery.
Mhm. Wow. Wow. Yeah, okay,
Mhm.
and then so when you had your second baby,
Yes.
um, how did things go with breastfeeding that time
And
around?
this is why I wanted to come on to this podcast and share with you because I believe breastfeeding it's such a spiritual experience, right? It's such an emotional connection. It's like human psychology through contact.
Mhm.
Um, and so I had my next child 3 years later,
Mhm.
and I was blessed that she lived and I got to bring her home from the hospital,
Mhm.
and I had a vision in my mind of what it was going to be like to snuggle her and breastfeed her and skin to skin her. And it was going to heal those parts of me, I believed, that had been robbed from the previous experience, because I'm a very nurturing human and I love the
Mhm.
physical touch and connection between myself and kids.
Mhm.
Well, I gave birth to a daughter who wanted none of it.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
It was as hard, if not harder, than the first time around, because I actually had a baby who needed feeding, right? So I had a
Mhm.
job to do,
Mhm.
except she didn't want to be fed the way that I envisioned it happening. And so I fought it and fought it and fought it. I pushed through hard through those 5 months, and those 40 minutes on one side and the trying on the other side. And like, I was just emotionally not ready to say, this is not going to work.
Sure.
And then, what would happen in the end is I would emotionally just be wrecked, beat up after every feed. And if you're doing the math, it wasn't that long before the next feed was
Right.
supposed to happen, right?
Mhm.
And somebody would come along with my breast milk in a bottle. She'd suck it down in 5 minutes flat, burp, be the happiest child on the planet, say, swaddle me tightly, put me down, and I'm good.
Wow.
And I went, I guess this is just not going to happen the way that I believed it was going to. And then, long story short, what we learned about her body's physiological needs and her sensory being and what
Mm.
she needed to feel good inside her body and safe as a sensory kid showed up later. And I looked back and I went, oh, I was torturing this poor brand new human being because of a vision that I had in my head and a need I had in my heart. And so, I lived and I learned and we got through it, and she's amazing. And we did so much work in her early young, her 2, 3, 4-year-old years about how to take ownership of her own sensory needs. And she's great.
Mhm.
My third kiddo came along. I had 3 kids in 5 years.
Mhm.
And she was a champ. Finally, the daughter. All 3 girls, by the way.
Mhm.
Finally, the one who just wanted to nestle in and hang there and even use me for soothing sometimes, and
Mhm.
just in every other way, not even just breastfeeding. Always be close, always be touching. She
Yeah.
grew up that way, and I called her my Velcro child for the longest time. And then, unfortunately, this doesn't have a happy ending either. About 2 months into her life, my husband looked at me and he said, I think you have that baby thing. I said, what are you talking about? I was overwhelmed, right? I had a just turned 2-year-old and a
Mhm.
newborn, and all life was just crazy. And he said, I think you have that baby thing that makes you depressed.
Mhm.
And I went to the doctor, and I'll never forget that day very clearly. Once it had been brought to my attention that I wasn't engaging the same way that I had with our previous daughter or any other newborn or infant that had come into my life, because there were
Mhm.
many. um, I went, oh, you might be onto something here. It feels different. And he said to me, you've got to stop breastfeeding to take
Hmm.
the medication.
Mm.
And my heart broke all over again, because now I had a child who was in this with me. And now I had set a new vision and a new goal. We were going to make it to that 1-year mark, and I was
Yeah.
going to do what I always said I was going to do and give her all the nutrition, and all the goodness to start life. And once again, I had to stop. And it was really hard. But on the other side of that, I think the gifts that she got from me when I returned to my postpartum self,
Mhm. Mhm.
when I got to the other side of that chemical imbalance that was really making me not the mom she needed me to be,
Mm-hmm.
then that's a better gift, right? So all of my breastfeeding stories are not what I had envisioned, and yet
Mm-hmm.
they are all part of the journey of motherhood that really, when you break it down to its core, is the very first time maybe in our lives that we realize we literally have no control over anything.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to embrace that and be willing to ride the roller coaster of the journey, whatever it looks like and however it presents itself.
How are you feeling today when you knew you were going to be coming on a breastfeeding podcast? Because it sounds like all three stories are still very much a part of you and very much have like an emotional imprint on you.
Yeah. And, that has been my entire journey to parenthood. I was
Mm-hmm.
the kid, I was the 10-year-old that people said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "A mom." So this was my life's work. This is my
This
life's
is
work.
it is.
This is, and now I'm making it an extension, like a legacy work
Mm-hmm.
through other families and other parents and the COVID generation who just showed up. And nobody's lives ever started more off kilter than theirs. So I can honestly come on to podcasts. I can do this on my own podcast and say with full confidence and a full heart that I've done my best job that I know how to do as a mom to all three of my kids, because they each needed me to show up differently for them. And honestly, it really sparked my collaborative parenting methodology, which is based in the idea that every single human being that you bring into the world is a unique human.
Mm-hmm.
And so one strategy does not fit all. One breastfeeding approach does not fit all.
Mm-hmm.
You have got to become so entrenched in knowing who the child is that you brought into the world
Mm.
that you can then respond with the strategies that do work, with the tight swaddle and the put me down.
Mm-hmm. Right, attuning to your baby from the very beginning. And I think that's something I had to learn too, is that um, babies really are just small sized full humans. And so I always love the way like my dad treats babies, because he from the very first day he would talk to them almost as if they were an adult, like just with the same amount of respect and like curiosity. And that's always stuck with me. We do like baby talk, Gucci Gucci goo, and it's like it's also okay to talk to them with the respect that you would give to any other human. And so to start attuning to your child from a very young age, I think that's my takeaway from what you're telling me, and what I hope moms at home are hearing is that it's very likely that your breastfeeding experience with this baby is different. Even if you have another baby, it's different from your friend, it's different from your sister. And that's going to continue to be true as the child grows. This child is going to be different from any other child. And it is our responsibility. We are uniquely positioned to tune into what they are asking for and decide how to meet those needs. So this is really beautiful, because I'm super interested in all of your conscious parenting work, and I wasn't exactly sure how we were going to tie it into breastfeeding, but it's becoming very clear that that is like our first opportunity to. It's not about us. Oh, it's not about us. It's not about what we want. It's not about what we envisioned. It's not about what would be convenient for our lives. It's about listening into to what our baby is asking for. Oh, that's so beautiful.
It is. And, you are allowed to have dreams and goals and visions, and you should. I teach in my programming what I call my personalized parenting mission statement.
Mhm,
And the good news about that is that it is your long-term vision for who you would like to raise in general.
mhm,
This will apply to all your children. Right? If your family core unit decides that their goal is to raise compassionate, empathetic, hardworking, team playing kids who are responsible for their actions, kids,
Mm-hmm.
That applies to all your kids. The differentiators come in when you've got kid A who digs in their heels and doesn't move versus kid B who's kind of flexible and willing to roll with things. How you approach the strategy of helping each of those children own their choices and their responsibilities is different. But the core model that your
Mm-hmm.
family has doesn't change.
So you're almost talking about creating like a mission statement or like a vision statement as if you were a giant corporation that has like a mission statement on their website for your family, for your parenting, for what you want to achieve in your household, essentially.
That it's I call it a parenting GPS. It is your North Star. We personalize it. And then the beauty is once we get through all the different strategies that are scientifically backed, you decide which one matches which of your children. And so you create a personalized parenting toolkit.
I love that. And then, so we sort of touched on collaborative parenting can start from day one, essentially.
Yeah.
What does it look like as we move through, like you you call it the fourth trimester, or like the 9 months in, 9 months out? I know that phrase came up earlier. Um, how do you see collaborative parenting evolving from newborn to infant to toddler and preschooler?
That is such a fantastic question. And I love getting nerdy about it. Um, so for me, the definition of collaborative parenting is that you are a team.
Hmm.
You are a team with your child. You are a team with your partner, the three of you, however many of you are in that home. It's a team. And specifically with that one kid at a time, you're going to run into things that need problem solving, right? Whether
Yep.
it's the fact that they want the yellow cup versus the orange cup,
Hmm.
or it's the fact that they need the light turned on and off 17 times before they go to bed. Or, as we were also talking about earlier, they're now mimicking language that you wish they wouldn't. And so now you have to help them kind of reframe what's appropriate to say and not to say.
Hmm.
You're always being faced with challenges throughout the day. Collaborative parenting at the 9 month mark means teaching them that they have a voice, even though they don't have a voice yet. They
Hmm.
have, they can sign by nine
Yep.
months old, so that gives them a voice. They have the ability to participate in that decision making process. And when you lay that foundation from day one, holding up two different shirts, right? Using your language to say, we're either changing your diaper on the table, your changing table, or we're changing your diaper on the floor. Oh, I think we'll do, helping them see that choice making is something they can be part of from day one. Which one do you choose? Is setting that strong foundation that you were talking about earlier. I call them the core four connectors. That an adult and a child can be in a relationship of mutual trust, respect, honesty, and have an open communication line to talk about anything, even when it's hard. And that allows you to do the 2 year old stuff. And you're
Hmm.
not always ending up in meltdown because your 2 year old knows, I know when mom speaks, it's the truth. I know she means what she says. I probably could push the boundary, but her answer is actually not going to change. I have a different idea of how I would love this trip to the park to go, but I know I'm allowed to tell her what I'm thinking. So I'm going to share it with her. Maybe she'll say yes. Maybe she won't. But if your child feels that seen, that heard, and that included, you stand a much better chance of navigating your days calmly, in connection, and collaborating with them for positive outcomes than if you start the day from the mindset of, I'm in charge, they just have to
Hmm.
do what I tell them to. You're really setting yourself up for power struggles, which end in tears.
But that's how most people grew up. That's definitely how the generation before us grew up. And so what you're advocating for is very different from what most people picture the parent-child relationship. So I guess what is your How do you talk to someone who is coming in with a completely different view, who thinks you're wrong, who thinks kids are going to turn out completely like, I don't know, worse, basically. This is worse. This is a worse way to parent your child. What do you say to them?
I say, look at the current generation that is out there in the world. Look at our 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds. Look at what's happening. Their inability to live on their own. They're all coming home.
Mhm,
We have incredibly sad events happening all over this country, and the young people that are going in and do it's just too, I can't even say it out loud. It's just too hard to think of. But
mhm,
I've asked this question so many times of society itself, and I ask it of parents too. And so I would ask this person who says, that probably just won't work. What age is your child no longer, oh, they're just a kid,
mm,
and now responsible for the words they say and the actions that they take?
mhm,
Is it 7? Is it 12? Is it 15? It's just, it's not a number that you can make a decision that arbitrarily, after 16 years of living on this planet and being treated in such a way and shown that this is the way of life,
mhm,
that all of a sudden you can now expect them to become somebody else who is going to add intense value to society and have respect for others. It's not a switch that you can turn
mhm,
on like that. It is the way that we start our life is what sets us up to understand that we do have to engage with society in a certain way. 85% of foundational brain growth, the literal size of a child's brain, is done growing by 5 years old.
mhm. That's
And
scary to those of us who like, my youngest is 5,
right.
and I'm like, "Shoot, that window is closing." Like, I hope I did a pretty good job. But that's sort of recent research, right? Like, I
Mhm.
think more and more parents are becoming aware of, like, I hear 0 to 5 and, like, 0 to 7,
Yeah.
and 0 to 2 are kind of like these golden windows for specific brain development. It doesn't mean there's nothing we can do after that, but it's just
Well,
highlights the importance of the younger years.
and that's really it's important that I caveat that, right? Birth to 5 is critical, but that doesn't mean that the neural pathways can't be shifted,
Mhm,
right? As adults, we're so many adults are into mindset work now and
mhm,
personal development and creating an understanding about that. And so that's the second answer to the question that you asked me. If somebody is 100% grounded in a closed mindset and they cannot see things from other people's points of view, then they're not somebody I can work with.
right,
I
right.
need, yeah. If people are aware that skills can be learned,
Mhm.
and if they can be learned differently and mastered in a new way, then we are 100% on the same page.
And I think, the selling point for me, like, I'm 100% aligned with you. I need to listen to all of your podcast episodes. I need all of your resources. I've already been going down this rabbit hole, and, it can be for selfish reasons. My life is better when
Yeah.
I am better at regulating my own emotions and working collaboratively with my children. It is a joy to truly coach them through problem solving. What just the other day, my 5-year-old, I don't even know what it was. Whatever the situation was, it was an opportunity where I could have stepped in and just fixed the thing for him.
Mhm.
I might do that because I wanna avoid him being frustrated. I just wanna get this thing over with, whatever it might be. I consciously told myself to, like, count to 15 and sit there. He figured it out, and, like, the quiet sense of pride he had
Mm.
from that, and I just know that sets him up for the next situation, and I'm not always gonna be there. So,
Yeah.
I know when I get it right, it pays dividends for him and for me. I stayed calmer in that situation, and we built trust. Like, mom is here if I need her, but also mom believes in me. Mom trusts me. She let me figure this thing out on my own. And I see many, many examples of parents stepping in really quickly to fix all the problems, to solve all the problems, to remove all the pain.
Mm-mm.
And I am really concerned about that. It's hard as a parent. Like
It's hard.
you don't, it's hard. But
So
I will say it's easier. My life is easier when I get this right.
two things on that. Number one, you can now use that in the future when he comes to you and says, "Here, help me." You can say, "I remember when you struggled with
Mhm.
this, and I gave you a few minutes and you figured it out all by yourself. You try. If you're struggling in a few minutes, let me know." Right? So you're empowering him based on his previous successes.
Mhm.
And then when that success happened, oh my gosh, celebrate it. Like,
Yeah.
literally put the words to it for him. I see that you managed to figure this out all by yourself. You must feel so proud
Mhm.
because you know what you've done. But the thing is, kids don't all, they're so in the moment.
Mhm.
Somebody said, actually, I think it's this week's guest episode that comes out next week. She said, kids are in their heart more than
Mm.
they're in their head.
Mhm.
Mel Daly is her name, going to give her credit. We are in our head more than we're in our hearts. So
That's
your heart celebrated that moment, and your head said, I know the great gift I just gave him, but he's
Mhm.
already on to the next thing. So make sure that you celebrate it intentionally with words so that he knows how you feel.
I love that. Yeah, and another place I do that is when I see, like, one of my children intentionally being kind or helpful to the
Right.
other. I really wanna call that out too, because that is something I hope that is the vision. That's part of my parenting vision is, kindness towards others, especially, people in your family. So, I will be better about it, but that's a really good reminder for all of us to, celebrate those wins out loud. And I think you're also hitting on, you are celebrating a very real accomplishment. You are not celebrating like, "Ooh, your picture is pretty because you use the color blue," or like,
Right.
surface level. We've all been sort of brought up to say like, "Oh, I like your shirt today." Like, that's okay, but they're not gonna get personal growth from
Mhm.
that. It's recognizing when they had a choice and they stuck with the hard thing and it paid off. Like, that's what's really gonna move the needle for them.
Absolutely. And did you hear how I shifted the language a little bit when I gave praise? We
Can you
very
remind
often,
us?
absolutely. We very often, always usually give praise from an I position. I'm so
Mhm.
proud of you.
Mm.
And I teach that we need to give that away to them. You must be so proud of yourself
Mm. Okay.
because we don't want that. They're little people. They're little people who believe we hang the moon. I see a moon in the background there. Um, we don't want them doing things to make us proud.
Oh boy. There's a lot of adults in therapy still because they're just trying to make their parents proud.
We want them to do things from the motivation that it's internal, that it drives from the inside. And those are the kids who grow up and, oh, I don't know, start businesses,
Yeah.
right? That internal motivation. Those are the kids who realize that if the project is going to take 3 weeks, they're going to start 3 weeks ahead of time and
Mhm.
break it down into chunks because they have an internal desire to do well with the final outcome. So, yeah, I mean, I know I go deep into the social psychology of it, but that's where it starts.
Mhm.
You really wanted to fit all the shapes inside the right blocks. You figured it out. You must feel so proud of yourself. Then I do a big old happy dance, right? I show them how I can
Mhm.
express my body with joy as well, but I don't own their pride. I let them own it.
Yeah. No, that's a really concrete tip we can all take away is shifting from, "I am proud of you because," or, "I like the way you did this," to, "You must feel so proud of the way you did this." That's something we can all take away.
Yeah.
One thing that I have told my friends I'm trying to do is to make my kids' lives harder. My kids' lives are so very easy. Not
Mhm.
that I have that hard of a life myself, but how are they ever going to have practice doing the hard thing if nothing is hard? So, and my oldest is 11, and I'm trying to find ways to just like make it harder to be an 11-year-old in today's world because otherwise it's not. So, do you have any tips or I mean, am I on the right path here that we sort of in the modern world we almost have to make things harder for our children otherwise the default is going to be like super easy, on demand, Disney Plus, watch whatever you want at any moment of the day.
Yeah, I mean, they are definitely they're being raised in a different era. It's not even just a different age, it's a different era at this point. They're digital citizens from the day they're born.
Mhm.
Right? They're coming into this post-pandemic world where all the rules and regulations for society seems to have shifted in some way. There's just so the good news is for you that there's plenty of challenges out there
Right.
to be collaborated on. Um, but I would just say always bring in their perspective,
Mhm.
right? You know what the big world is going to hold them accountable for, but they don't. And so if you create a situation or you notice a situation, it's clear to me, Emily, that you're really good at observing, that you're like, ooh, I see a moment here that I can create something. Make sure if it organically fits in during, great. And if not, afterwards, to have that follow-up conversation and say, did you know that out in the world, this is going to help you because,
Mhm.
right? Let's take your let's move it to social media for a second
Yeah,
because
good one.
okay, um, so and so's friends are all posting this, that, and the other, and your child thinks it would be really fun to join in.
Mhm.
And you put your boundaries in place and you make it harder and you limit the screen time and you do all of the things that align with your household. And they have their reaction and you work through it together. Did you know that in 8 years, or however long you think it is, when you want to go get a job, employers are now looking at your social media accounts, your personal ones, and all the things that you posted and said as a
Mhm.
measure of whether or not they think you would be a good fit. Now, when you and I grew up, we had the freedom, I don't know how great this is, to make stupid
Yeah,
choices, and
100%.
then they got hid under the rug,
Not on
right? Our
YouTube. Yeah.
employers didn't have to know about those choices we made.
Yeah.
But this culture is setting themselves up to be under that microscope at every moment. And so the choices they make have to align. You've told me, now I'm talking to your daughter again. You've told me that you have a dream to become what's she want to be?
Oh, it's Max. I have 3 boys, actually. We're the
Oh, sorry.
opposites.
Yes.
What does he I mean, I think he'd love to be like a YouTube short content creator at this point.
Oh, fantastic. So,
Mhm.
Max, you've told me that you would like to be a content creator. Well, those people, they need to be respected online. They're an authority figure online. So if you
Mhm.
start now posting things that you feel so confident about, that you feel like people can respect you for doing it, and that it's from an authority place, you're going to set yourself up to do that, no problem.
Mhm. That's
Is
really
that
good, and
helpful?
I see how you're putting yourself in his perspective. What does he care about?
Mhm.
What does he care about today, and what can he stretch himself enough to think about, like, what he might care about in the future?
Yeah.
So that's a really good reminder. And yeah. So
And
we covered a
what would
lot,
our parents have said? Right? Our parents would have said, "Well, just because Johnny did it doesn't mean you have to do it."
right?
Like, very different conversation that we just had.
Right. What do you learn from that? Well, there's going to be things that Johnny does do that I should also do. So what's the difference?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, deeply rooted in the ability to talk about anything without judging each other.
Hmm. That's the right. So I think part of the collaborative parenting is that non-judgment,
Mhm.
so that they continue to come to you to problem solve together, and they don't think that a certain problem is going to be too much for you to handle or is going to make you think of them differently. As I enter the preteen and the teen years, that's something I'm very aware of is just always remaining calm, and like
Mhm.
not expressing any knee-jerk reactions so that I feel like a safe place to come with problems.
Yeah, because that's what people tell me the most, right? I ask, and I work with parents who have littles, but I say, when they're teenagers, what is the number one thing you want from them? To be able to tell me anything.
Yeah.
Well, that starts now,
Yeah.
right? That starts now. If they come to you at 2.5, because at 2.5, they still are blessedly filter free and they just are I broke your lamp, mommy, right?
Mhm.
I just did this and I'm going to tell you about it. And if you lose your cool and you blame and you yell and you should have and you what if, well, that sets the tone for it's not safe to go to mommy when I make a mistake.
Do you have any
Mhm.
advice for, because we're all going to lose our cool, we're all going to say
We
the thing
are.
we shouldn't say. How
Yep.
do you repair? So in that example,
Mhm.
how then after you've cooled down, how do you repair with your child?
Yeah. And repairing is so easy. It's so easy. And I think as an adult, for us, the ability to apologize to little kids just feels awkward
Yeah.
because it comes from a place of giving away power.
Mhm.
And I highly encourage it.
Mhm.
I highly encourage it. You just, in that quiet moment, whenever it feels safe to do it, and nobody's heightened anymore, I used words I didn't want to use. I am so sorry that I couldn't find my calm in that moment. You surprised me. I didn't expect you to say what you said. We all make mistakes. It's just a lamp. I can replace the lamp. Do you forgive me? I ask it. I ask
Mhm.
it. And kids feel so valued and
Mhm.
so loved and so heard when they hear the words, "Do you forgive me?" Yes, of course, mommy. Of course I
Of course,
forgive
I love
you.
you. You're my favorite
Of
person in
course.
the whole wide world.
Right? And chances are they've moved past it.
Right.
But here's the thing that most parents don't understand, because what we see is what we believe, right? We're a see it to believe it society.
Yeah.
So, yes, your kids are going to move past this stuff super fast and they'll be on to the next thing. But it's the seed that was planted you're going to deal with 3 months later when the next thing pops up, and
Yeah.
2 years later when the next thing pops up. And it's those seeds that just stay there, that grow into guarded people who don't want to share with you in their later years.
Yeah. And who yell at other people that mess up. So I think the real payoff is when you see your child treat someone else with kindness
Yeah,
and non-judgment, because they've been treated that way. And that really is a seed. Like that, if you plant that at 2.5, it might take a little while.
yeah.
But for me, that's like a huge payoff.
Because they don't think about these interactions the way we do,
Mhm.
right? They believe everything you say to be the truth. They believe every way of interacting to be the way people interact. Everything you present to them environmentally, with your words, with your body language, with your tone, they are basically just note takers.
Yeah.
They're tiny little note takers for the first 5 years, putting the puzzle together, saying,
Mhm.
oh,
That's yeah.
this is how we do it when someone, okay, great. When someone calls after 9 p.m., that's how we yell about, okay, great. They're adding all the puzzle pieces together
Mhm.
and coming up with the way that they believe the world works.
Right. Because that's how you survive. Figure out how the world works and then follow the program to
Yeah.
succeed.
And it's why they push boundaries. And so for people who are out there listening, please know that's so healthy. If you have a boundary pushing toddler, 4-year-old, 6-year-old, it doesn't matter how old your kids are at this moment. When we push boundaries, that's our learning buffer.
Mhm.
And so we're either going to learn that that boundary is firm and it was put there in place on purpose to keep us safe and that we can trust the person who did it, or we're going to learn that that boundary was expanded like you are doing for your 11-year-old, right? I'm expanding this boundary because here is where I need you to do some of your own personal learning, and we're just going to keep expanding.
Mhm.
But it's their
Yeah.
job to do that. It's not their job to be perfect.
Right. Right. And we're not even close to perfect. I've read before, like we have bad days all the time and we expect our kids not to have bad days. Like that's
Right.
just unrealistic. I know something else you're really passionate about is the COVID generation. So I did want to give you time to talk a little bit about why that's something that you're passionate about right now.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. Yes. So, I work with people in those toddler and preschool years. That's just who I work with. But it just so happens that right now, that group of parents are pandemic parents.
Mm-hmm.
And they had COVID babies who were born, and they're now between 1 and 5 years old. And so I break these kids into two groups: our true pandemic babies, 2021,
Mm-hmm.
born in 2021, um, who were born into isolation,
Yep.
right? So they had very little opportunity to organically learn any of the real world skills that kids do by leaving the house, engaging with other people, hearing lots of different voices, interacting with kids their own age, all of that aren't siblings.
Mhm. Yep.
Um, and then we have our kindergarten and first graders who were preschoolers and we're doing all of those learning leaps, and then
Mhm.
COVID hit the pause button on that part of their developmental journey, and so we're noticing all kinds of delays,
Mhm.
and in all these kids, speech and language, social emotional ability to regulate how they're feeling, to even understand how they're feeling.
Mhm.
Their social anxiety is through the roof. There are lots of tech addictions that we're seeing in little kids,
Mhm.
because that was a soothing strategy that a lot of parents had no choice but to use in order to get through the survival period.
Yep.
So yes, I am the champion of the COVID generation. I feel like I'm the Lorax, right? I speak for the COVID generation
Yeah.
because I firmly believe that the world is opening back up, and that's fantastic, right? They say that the medical crisis is over. Great. The
Mhm.
educational crisis is just beginning. And if we don't pay attention now and readjust some of the expectations for success that we have for preschoolers, kindergarteners, and first graders, they are going to continually feel like they're failing because they don't have the majority of, I will say, some kids came through this without issue because there's always that section of people, and that's fantastic. And for those
Mhm.
families, I am just so glad for you. But the majority of kids are showing they need us to slow down, directly teach some of these skills
Yeah.
that they didn't get the opportunity to practice and master before we hold them accountable with our testing and our check marks
Mhm.
in a pre-pandemic model.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to me. I know, and I think about my own 5-year-old. He had the benefit of having older siblings, and we had some families that we still, were socializing with, interacting with, some family members, but I also have friends and family where that was their first baby. So it was
Yeah.
true, true isolation. There was
Yep.
no interacting going on. So
And
yeah, we're
those
probably gonna be talking about this for years to come.
we are. We're gonna be, but we need to deal, like, we can't just talk, right? We gotta do.
Yeah.
And those parents, the ones who you're talking about, they're so excited. Now they can go to the play groups, and now they can go here, and they can go to the park, and they're engaging with other kids. They've got their kids enrolled in preschool, and they say, "Can you share, please?" And their child has no idea what that is.
Mhm.
But we're still holding them accountable for a 3-year-old mile marker
Mhm.
because they're 3. But their ability to understand what sharing means and what turn taking is and what it feels like, and they're not at a 3-year-old level for that. So that's where I'm stepping up and saying, let's identify for each family what your current real struggles are,
Mhm.
and then I can help you work with your child to start to scaffold that process. And the great news is, because they're not babies, they're going to learn it quickly.
Mhm.
There'll be a really short half-life to this learning process,
Yeah.
as long as you are using effective strategies and compassionate language and supporting them through it.
So, for families who are listening, we know they can also find out lots more from you. Where should someone go to learn? all the things about everything you're talking about?
Well, you can connect with me on Instagram at core4parenting, the number 4 in there. And then I will just shoot you a quick message. And if you want to have some voice memos, we can get to know each other a little bit that way. I feel really connected to people that way. But also, I will make sure that I have my bio link for you to put in the show notes.
Perfect.
And there you can grab, I have what I call my 5 mindset mantras for managing toddler meltdowns. And it's how you control your own mental status, just like Emily did, just like you did in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it also empowers you to understand the value of what your child's going through in that moment. So 5 meltdown mantras to help you get through it without causing more trauma to you or your kiddo.
And that, to me, that feels hopeful. It's like there's a better way.
Mhm.
There's the power struggle. There's another option just for people who are at the end of the rope, as I think we all are at one time or another when we're raising toddlers. So we'll definitely have all your information in the show notes. And then is there anything that we didn't get to touch on today that you just want to make sure you shared in our conversation?
I just want to say thank you. I feel really, really, I love knowing that there's so many moms out there who are shifting the paradigm. And then that group meets a new group. And before I know it, we're going to combat all of the ugly that's happening in the world right now with our new mindsets and our new perspectives and our ability to see the good in our kids, even after a really hard day. And that's going to redefine that next generation. And that's my big dream.
I love that. And your mom social support group is really powerful. Like who you hang out with and who you go to for mom advice is going to shape your own experience. So you're right, that we do have sort of that ability to influence and shift things, better for the kids and better for the parents, for sure.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Cara, and I'm sure we'll be in touch plenty more in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for the space to share this. And I look forward to hearing from you again.
Thank you for listening, and I do want to apologize that I mispronounced Cara's name at the end there in my excitement. I invite you, if you're just curious for more information on breastfeeding, please head to empoweredbumpsandboobs.com. You can access a free preview of our course, Empowered Breastfeeding Bootcamp. When you enroll in that course, not only do you get lifetime access to all of the information about breastfeeding, you get access to live weekly group calls. So you can connect with other moms, and you can connect with other moms on the discussion forum and ask questions and get some answers there. It's everything you need to feel much more supported with your breastfeeding journey, and we would love to have you there. I will definitely include all of Cara's resources in our show notes. And if you have any feedback for me, please reach out, Emily at empoweredbumpsandboobs.com. And if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, please reach out to Emily at empoweredbumpsandboobs.com. Thank you so much and be well.